Welcome again to those who are jumping in for another FI Connects discussion. We are absolutely thrilled to have you with us today. Again, if you have not shared in the chat yet your name, where you're located, and what is maybe keeping you motivated right now, we would really love to hear from you. Also, if you need to really quickly step away and grab a sheet of paper and pencil, I think that would help a little bit as well. And Tom, yes, I think a lot of us are counting down on our mental as well as physical calendars right now. So I'm impressed that you get to end out on the 21st. I know some of you out there may be going a little bit longer with remote learning. But again, we are absolutely thrilled to have you with us today and to be joining us for this conversation. So really quickly, for those of you who have not joined us before, my name is Shayla Rexroad. I am one of the facilitators at the Friday Institute. I will kind of be leading a lot of the conversation today. But again, as Laura and I both will tell you, and if you've joined these sessions before, we like to do a little bit of talking, but we love to hear a lot from you. So please take advantage of the chat window as a space to share resources, share ideas, post questions, anything that might come up. I am also joined by my friend and colleague, Laura Albright. She is going to be kind of behind the scenes helping me out today. We know, and we have learned through our own experiences of doing these sessions, how important it is to have someone that can focus on the chat as well as somebody who can really lead the conversation. So she will also be posting resources into the chat window as I am sharing them throughout the session. But also know at the very end, we will share a link for you to be able to access these slides. We will also share a link where you can go and catch the recording. So if you have friends or colleagues who couldn't make it and you leave this going, oh my gosh, this would be so beneficial to them, we would love for you to share it, or you can go back yourselves. But we will also share what we have started. It's a kind of a curated resource of all of the past FI Connects discussions. We've been adding all of those resources to a Google Doc. So do know you will get all of it. So if there's something in the chat that you happen to miss, don't panic. We'll make sure that you get it. You do also have the option to save the chat window. If you have your chat window open, if you look in the bottom right-hand corner, you should see 3 little dots appear. If you click on that, there's an option where you can save the chat. So again, lots of different ways that we hope you can capture the information today. But again, we'd love to hear from you as you are listening and kind of coming up with your own ideas of things that you're doing. If you are new to Zoom, I know a lot of you have probably been using it a lot, more than you ever thought you would. But for those of you who maybe are not using this platform as regularly with your students, if you're using another one such as Google Hangouts, we did want to take just a couple of seconds to familiarize everybody with the Zoom platform. If you are seeing everybody's little thumbnail images and their beautiful faces, but you are finding that to be a little distracting, which we know it can for some people, if you just click up in the, I believe it's the left-hand corner, you should see an option to minimize it, but you can also change the view. You can also move it around where they are sitting on the screen. You can at any point double click to exit full screen. I know sometimes people like to have a separate document running to the side of this webinar where they're populating and adding resources, so you can do that. We do have everyone on mute right now. However, you do have the option to come off of unmute. So at any point, if you would rather verbally share with the group an idea or a question, please do not hesitate to interrupt me and stop me and ask it. But also you're welcome to take advantage of the chat feature. So again, if you have not found the chat window yet, if you just scroll probably around the bottom of your screen, you'll see an option that says chat. And that should pop up for you. And again, we would really love for everybody to take advantage of this space throughout the session today. As I mentioned, we are the Friday Institute. For those of you who are not familiar with the Friday Institute, we are a part of the College of Education at NC State. We are actually located on Centennial Campus, towards the back end of the campus. And we kind of like to share that the Friday Institute is really a space where policy, practice, and research come together. So there are several different teams within the Friday Institute that are all working in different areas in order to support education and educators across the state of North Carolina. Our particular team, the team that Laura and I are a part of, is the Professional Learning and Leading Collaborative. And we really focus on researching, developing, and delivering professional learning for educators like yourselves. So we were, as soon as this remote learning situation impacted North Carolina, our team immediately kicked in and started saying, what is it that we could do to support you right now? And thus grew the FI Connect session. So again, we really want this to be a discussion, a space where you're sharing equally with us, because we know that there is still a lot to be learned. And we certainly do not position ourselves as knowing all of it, but we do hope that you enjoy the resources that we are able to share today. These sessions, so again, if you've been joining webinars, you will find that these are intentionally designed to be very different than a traditional webinar. We are also hosting webinars, and in webinars, it's more of the person who's facilitating or the group of people facilitating, they are spending a majority of the time just talking at you, and you are gathering and consuming information. These sessions, we wanted to design them to be very different. We want them to be extremely informal. So again, you coming off of mute, sharing, asking questions, posting resources. We really want it to be discussion based. We want everybody to feel like they have a contribution. There are absolutely no right or wrong answers to this work that we're doing, because it is new for everybody. This is one of those times in history where we can all say, we absolutely built the plane while it was flying, and we came together as a community of learners in order to support our students in very unique ways. So again, just saying, questions are absolutely invited. Open-ended questions may be asked. They could be something that Laura and I don't directly right now have an answer to, but do know we will give you a survey at the end. We encourage you to post that question back in there if it didn't get answered. We will absolutely make every effort possible to get back to you in order to provide you with some guidance or some structure. We also know that there's more than one possible answer to a lot of this work that we're doing. And all ideas are okay to share. Again, this is a very open, vulnerable space. Again, we're all learning in this together. Nobody can say, oh, I'm an expert of the situation that we're in right now, because nobody's really been in it before. So it is very much a learning curve for a lot of us. So when I initially stopped and kind of recognized that, okay, I'm gonna host another FI Connects session, what exactly do maybe the teachers yourselves need, but also kind of where am I in this space, and how can I relate and bring some credibility to the conversation? So this honestly is an image that depicts exactly what I felt like a week ago when I started building out this session. My head was spinning, much like yours. I have so many moving parts, so many different things happening within my own family, also within my job, that I just sometimes feel like my head is going to explode, and this is what it's going to look like. So it's very much a situation where, a lot of you may feel right now like your brain is spinning out of control. I think a lot of us to our space now where we have a lot of really great ideas and things that we want to be able to do with our students to support them, but also we're in a space where, oh my gosh, I've got so many ideas. I don't know how to bring them all together. I don't know how to select the right ones for the right group of students and to make sure that I am reaching every student that I possibly can. So that led me to realizing that I really felt like this, that, okay, I have days where I'm really motivated, I'm pushing. And then midweek to the end of the week, everything starts to feel like this huge boulder and it's not moving and I don't know what to do. And for some of you, the boulder could represent some of your students, that you may be in a space where you feel like, okay, I've given them every opportunity possible. I've made myself available for question and answer. I'm doing recorded sessions. I'm trying to reach out by phone and all these creative ways. And I still have students who just are not motivated. They're not with me. So that's when we start to think about, all right, if we ourselves as individuals are losing momentum and need to regain motivation, our students probably in the exact same space right now. They are probably feeling the same way, that they have days where they are super motivated and they're jumping and doing their work. And then they have other days where they just don't feel like they have it in them to do or give anymore. So that's what I thought we would talk about today, is this idea of motivation. how can we help ourselves, because you are equally important in this process, how can we help ourselves and our students stay motivated, especially with the recent announcement from the governor that students would not return to school. A lot of our students were kind of maintaining their motivation with that prospect of seeing everybody and resuming a sense of normalcy on May the 18th. And now that has been swept out from under them, especially for our secondary students. That is really detrimental for some of them right now, because that is something that was that focal point for them. But now that it's the realization, all right, we're going to keep doing this for a couple more weeks, and then this is how we're going to end the year. This is definitely a time where we're seeing a lot of our students just dwindle and fade on us. So I want to take a really quick minute just to kind of frame the conversation around two types of motivation. So a lot of you are probably very familiar with extrinsic motivation. It's really something that happens when you're motivated by a specific reward or outcome. So for example, our students study really hard for a test because they care about the grade, they get the grade, and they're super motivated. But then we also know extrinsic motivation can be very short-lived. It is, all right, they get that initial high, they got the grade, and then, okay, what's next? What's that next thing that I'm going to get? So we know for a lot of our students, school, it provided that constant sense of extrinsic motivation, whether it was positive or negative, but it was there for them. The situation that we're in now, we're really seeing this need for our students to be intrinsically motivated, especially for a lot of you. If you are not providing grades right now to your students, we know, I believe all students have been told they're not taking any end of course assessments. I know a lot of things like the ACT and the SAT, that those have all been postponed. So for a lot of our students, they're sitting in this space of asking the question, well, why? Why am I going to do this? What is going to drive me or motivate me to keep doing this when that extrinsic motivators have been removed? Some of you may have heard this referred to as grit. If you follow any of the work that Angela Duckworth does, she's probably one of the more recent pioneers to really dive into this idea of intrinsic motivation. And this is where she talks about, do students have grit? Do they have passion and a sustained persistence towards long-term achievement? Not really concerned about the grades that they might get or the rewards, but it's more about how they are learning to be a productive, contributing citizen to the world, where they intrinsically feel motivated because they know it's the right thing that they want to do for themselves. These two combined are absolutely critical. You cannot exclude one and think that the other can happen. The human body, the brain, it depends on both of these to an equal degree. But again, for a lot of our students, they've lived in this world predominantly of extrinsic whenever they think about school. But we know the two combined are really essential in order for our learners to feel ultimately successful, not only in school, but in life, for them to start to understand sometimes you do things because it's the right thing to do for you and knowing why it is that you're doing it. So then it raises the question, how can we foster intrinsic motivation for our students during remote learning? And it's a really, really difficult thing to do. I'll be completely honest. When I first decided to tackle this topic and started doing research and looking for articles on it, there was very little out there because, again, we haven't really placed our students in this type of situation before. There were a lot of articles about students who are homeschooled or students who have chosen to do like North Carolina virtual school, but we know that this is not the same thing. This is a very different type of dynamic for a lot of our students. So a lot of what I'm about to share in some of the strategies are ones that I grabbed from several more recent articles. But again, I would love to hear from you in the chat, things that maybe you're already doing in order to foster intrinsic motivation. Because we are finding through our work at the Friday Institute, it is a missing link right now, especially for our secondary students. So as I was researching and looking, I have school age girls, they're in 4th grade, and they were recently reading fables as something that they needed to review for class. And it got me thinking about and remembering the fable, Aesop's fable of the fox and the grapes. And this one talks about the fox leapt high to grasp the grapes, but the delicious looking fruit remained just out of reach of his snapping jaws. After a few attempts, the fox gave up and said to himself, "These grapes are sour, and if I had some, I would not eat them." The fox changes his attitude to fit his behavior. And when we stop and reflect on that with our students right now, you really start to understand maybe a little bit more of where they are. A lot of times we stop and we have the capacity to choose how we want to view a situation. It's a general misconception that our beliefs are the cause of our actions. It's actually the other way around. So just like the fox, people oftentimes tell themselves a story to justify their actions. This helps to really protect us against failure. And again, if you've read any research or again, being in your own classroom, you have very, very quickly realized students avoid failure at all costs. Education has not done the best job over the past century of preparing students for failure. We've really created this negative stigma around this idea of failure. So it helps to protect them. But as educators, we're actually encouraged to place students in situations where they can start to persuade themselves that they're just intrinsically motivated to behave a certain way or to carry out certain actions. So right now, a lot of our students are probably telling themselves, I don't need to do this assignment because it isn't for a grade, or I'm not going to do as well at home as I would at school, so I'm not even going to start. Or I didn't complete that assignment because you as my teacher, you weren't available to help me at the moment that I needed it. Or I couldn't join your Q&A session at the time. So instead, what we want to try to do is to create this different mindset for our students. And as I was looking into it, I came across really, really great research around purposeful mindsets and recognizing the importance of having a purposeful mindset. And it really is helping our students learn to encounter challenges, to overcome difficulty, and to start to look at roadblocks as simply an obstacle that they can work through, but it should also hopefully start to be something that motivates them to persist and barrel through. And I know some of you right now may be sitting there going, yeah, this sounds really great, but how do you actually do this when we aren't sitting face to face with our students in a classroom, where we're maybe not even connecting with them every single day, depending on their access to technology and resources? So that's where I want to get a little bit more into trying to figure out what are some of those strategies? What are the things that you can be doing remotely in order to support your students? So I'm going to share with you a couple of activities. Again, I would love to hear from you. This is definitely an area of tremendous interest for me, not only as a parent myself with my own two students who I experience, or my own two children where I'm experienced the decline of motivation, but also just as being a lifelong learner myself. What are things that can be happening to continue to motivate? So you'll see over to the left is kind of the name of the activity. And then I labeled the right side as the ask. What is it that you're going to maybe be asking or engaging with your students about in order to keep them engaged, whether you're doing an online lesson or whether or not it's something that you are doing in a recording? One of the things we've talked about in a previous discussion is the idea of it's okay to be Dora the Explorer. If any of you have watched the Dora the Explorer cartoons, you know that Dora talks to the screen as if she is directly talking to you. And she'll actually pause and wait for you to respond to her. And believe it or not, you find yourself responding, even though you know that she can't hear you and that it's a cartoon, you do it naturally. So a lot of these can also be done in your recordings where you pause, you ask them this, and you sit there and you wait a couple of minutes to see how are they going to respond. So some of the things, one is called 2 lines. The way you would potentially play this out virtually is that at the very beginning of a lesson, you might say to your students, all right, I'm drawing a virtual line right now through the middle of my screen. And I need you in your minds to decide which line you're going to be in for the next 30 to 45 minutes. Are you going to be in the line that's ready to learn? Or are you going to be in the line that you're going to tune out in about 5 minutes and totally disengage? So again, these may not be things that you ask them to verbally share with you or to put in the chat, but it just starts to get them to stop and think about, no, okay, I need to be in the line ready to learn. I need to dedicate myself to this and I need to do it. Another one is questions with a scale. So at the end of a lesson, asking your students on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not at all, 10 being 100%, I'm doing it. How likely are you to do your homework? Or how likely are you to complete this assignment? Or how likely are you to join the next session? Again, you can ask them to respond or just keep it to themselves. But again, you hopefully are starting to see how it kind of plays this mind game with them where they're going, oh, well, you know, I guess I am going to do this. I would say I'm maybe a 6 or a 7. Or you'll have something like, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be a 10. Another is the goal sheet. Ask each student to share their commitment for learning during the session. This is one that you could do at the very beginning of the session and just ask your students to post, what's your commitment? Are you 100% with me? Is there something else going on right now around you that's maybe a temporary distractor? Letting them communicate and letting you know that. But then at the end of the class, ask them to go back and review their commitment. Were they able to stay on pace with you? Did they stay committed with what they said they would? And if not, what are some things that maybe got in the way that you could possibly help them with? You know, encouraging them to reach out to you to say, you know, I really try so hard in these lessons to stay committed, you know, to whatever I said I would, but you have to understand that I've got 2 little brothers and sisters that are running around me like crazy, even though I tell them not to. So then that's your opportunity to reach out and start to have that conversation with them. What are other things that might be, they could do in order to feel successful? A couple of other ones, again, remind by asking. So again, rather than telling them throughout your remote learning sessions what they need to do, just simply periodically stop and ask them to respond in the chat. So what do you think you're going to do now? Or what do you think next steps are going to be? Or what do you think you're going to do whenever we finish up? Again, it invokes this sense of choice. Instead of it sounding like you are dictating and telling them what they have to do, they kind of get to tell you what it is that they're going to do. Again, providing choice. We've talked about in prior sessions this idea of choice boards. They're absolutely fantastic. Again, you can still put everything in there and tell the students they need to complete the whole choice board, but they get options in which order they choose to do them. And lastly, encouraging collaboration. Even if you have students that aren't online, if you could encourage them to share telephone numbers and get on the phone with one another to talk through. I know a lot of teachers and some students in my own neighborhood, they started doing virtual learning or homework together where they get online together in the evenings or during the day, and they are just helping each other through the assignments. Just knowing that that other person is there with them can really keep them motivated. So again, I'd love to hear from you in the chat if you have ideas or suggestions, or if some of these have kind of sparked your imagination of, oh, this is something that I've done that's very similar to that. We would love to hear from you in the chat. So again, how are you fostering intrinsic motivation? Again, those are just a few, but hopefully they are ones that you feel like you could immediately take back and start to think about implementing or bringing into some of your sessions. So I'll pause there for just a minute to see, are there any questions? You know, again, feel free to post anything into the chat. I do see that Laura has been posting the links to all the resources that I've been sharing where you can dive a little bit deeper into any of this. So again, feel free to continue to add to the chat. All right. We also know that it is equally important for you to stop and check in on your own motivation. So these are just a couple of things that I myself have been doing. I know a lot of my friends and colleagues at the Friday Institute have been doing the same, friends in the neighborhood who are working from home. But it's really important that you not only identify a workspace, you know, that space where either you're going to build your lessons or you're going to maybe deliver your sessions, but also stopping to look at that workspace and see, have you surrounded yourself with things that motivate you? Or have you put yourself into this doom and gloom corner of a room that you kind of look at and go, okay, here we go. I'm going to sit down and do this. Maybe add some pictures of families, or a picture from a favorite vacation, or a picture of the future vacation that you hope to have. For some of you, it's having things like a stress ball nearby that you can just squeeze as you're working. For me, it's having my pet by my side. I have a beautiful chocolate lab. I've now nicknamed her Zoom Dog because she literally is in every session that I do. And she just sits underneath my feet. And I just know that she's there and she keeps me motivated. For some of you, playing soft music. Again, yes, Sandra, sometimes it's good to have a punching bag nearby. Completely fine to have that during this situation. Also making sure, I know a lot of you have been pressed by your administrators to have a work schedule where you post that for your students, you let them know when you're available, but also it's equally important to have a life and family schedule, to know what are those dedicated times in the day that you are full on committed to your family or to your life, to exercising, connecting with someone on the phone, whatever it might be, but also setting a timer. This is something that I've learned through experience, to set a timer on my phone or my computer to periodically remind me to get up, reconnect with my family, go outside and talk to a neighbor from afar, give somebody a call, or just stretch, go for a quick walk, whatever it might be. These are all things that are extremely important for us when we think about our own motivation. So I know that was a lot of information. Hopefully your brains are kind of spinning a little bit, but not totally out of control. But again, Laura and I like to practice what we teach, and we know that we have really been stressing the importance of giving periodic brain breaks, especially when you're doing a session as long as an hour. So I'm going to do just that. So I'm going to give you about 15 seconds, stand up, stretch, dance. I hope that you don't leave the webinar because it's only 15 seconds. We're going to jump back in, but we are going to get started with a quick break. So enjoy. All right, again, really quick break, but something, again, that's equally important in keeping your students motivated during sessions is if they know ahead of time, and this becomes a regular part of every session that you do, again, they know that they have something to look forward to. That could be a little bit of that extrinsic, but also that intrinsic, that they know they get that chance just to stop and reflect, think about everything you shared, and be ready for the next part of the session. So this is where we get into a little bit more of thinking about, you know, we have students that you do some of the activities that I just shared. You're sending them resources, you're connecting with them. Again, you're really trying to focus on their intrinsic motivation. But we know that for some of our students, despite their best efforts, things still stand in the way of their motivation. And we know through research that a lot of that oftentimes has to do, especially right now, with executive functioning skills. So for the next portion of this conversation, this is where I'd like to go, is to talk a little bit more about executive function. If you're not familiar with the term, it's basically the process we use in our brain to complete daily tasks. How we get through life skills, that oftentimes they are things that we are taught, and they are things that we practice over and over and over again. So to help you kind of put this in perspective, this is where I asked you early on to grab a quick sheet of paper. If you don't have one, you can certainly just open something up on your screen, a notepad or something. But I'm going to give you a minute. It's going to seem a little long, but I promise it'll go quickly. I want you to jot down everything you did this morning from the time you got up until you joined this webinar. Be very specific. Like from the second your eyeballs opened, what did you do? Did you immediately turn off a phone alarm or another alarm? Did you turn on a lamp? What is every single incremental thing that you did that you can get down on paper in a minute from this morning to when you joined the webinar? So I'm going to be quiet and I'm going to let you write. All right. Oops, sorry about the alarm. All right. So I know for some of you, you may have not even gotten past the first 15 minutes of your day, depending on what all you do and how detailed you chose to be. But now I want you to stop, look back at that list, and ask yourself, when you were completing every single one of those tasks, did you have to stop and think about how to do each one? Like when you opened your eyes, did you have to sit there and say to your brain, okay, you need to roll over, you need to lift your hand, you need to put it on the snooze button, or you need to hit snooze on your face? Or is it just something innately you just started to do? Getting out of bed, did you have to tell your body how to get yourself out of bed? Most likely not. These are all things that are considered executive function. They are skills that over time you trained your brain to do, but they are also things that you just do. They are part of a routine. They are a part of everything that you do every single day. For some of you, it might be a little different though. You've maybe learned some new strategies or techniques, or maybe that morning routine has changed a little bit because of COVID-19. Maybe you're getting to sleep a little bit later, or you're staying up later, or how, when you're choosing to get ready may be a little bit different in the day, because maybe you don't have to be at school by 7 o'clock. You're maybe not online until 9. So you get to reverse the order and have your cup of coffee and watch the news before you get ready, whatever it might be. But these are all things that hopefully it didn't create this sense of overwhelming distress for you. It was more of your brain just saying, all right, I'm going to alter things a little bit. Here's what it's going to be. For some of you, you might still be figuring out your routine, but also stopping to recognize that, again, this is all part of executive functioning. It's our capacity to be able to understand skills and to be able to work through those skills. Now, let's put this in perspective of a student. So this is about a 3-minute video, but please stick with me because it's a great video and it does the best job of helping us put executive functioning into the perspective of a secondary student and what a day in the life for them might be. This one is not specific to remote learning, but a lot of it carries over into the same dynamic that they're experiencing at home. So with no further ado, I'm going to play it. And Laura, if you would please let me know in the chat if you can't hear it, and I'll turn it up, but hopefully you will all be able to hear it. Oh, sorry. There we go.
Meet Josh. Josh is a 6th grade student who has executive functioning issues. Executive functions work together to help the brain organize and act on information. Watch Josh's day to see what some of our own students have to deal with. Think of executive functions as what the chief executive officer of a company must do: analyze, organize, decide, and execute. Around the time of puberty, the frontal part of the cortex of the brain matures, allowing individuals to perform these skills. Some students' brains may take longer to mature, meaning that these functions continue to pose difficulties to them. It's 7 a.m. Josh is about to leave the house. He knows he's forgetting something, but what is it? Ah, that's it. It's his cleats for his soccer game. He runs back in the house to grab them, but ends up forgetting his backpack while running to catch the bus. The executive functions present are organization and working memory. It's 11 a.m. and Josh is struggling in class. His teacher is asking questions about the previous night's homework that Josh didn't complete. He forgot to check Google Classroom or write any notes. The executive functions present are organizing and focusing. 12:10, lunchtime, Josh's favorite part of the day. During lunch, he talks too loud and tends to annoy his friends. He's been in the hall even though he's been asked 3 times to leave. The executive functions present are self-monitoring and controlling impulses. 12:50, Josh's teacher has explained the class's next task verbally and has written it down on the board. Josh is still having trouble getting started though, and his laptop is open when others are working. The teacher explains the expectations a second and third time to Josh before he actually starts. The executive functions present are shifting focus, setting priorities, and starting tasks. 7 o'clock. After a lot of pushing from his mom, Josh finally sits down to do homework, but he doesn't know where to start. Instead of doing his English chapter questions or Pearson homework due tomorrow, he surfs the web for a science topic that's due for his project next week. The executive functions present are setting priorities, starting tasks, and sustaining attention. 11:30 p.m. It's way past Josh's bedtime and he's exhausted. He tries to sleep, but he can't shut off his brain. He's worrying about disappointing his teachers because he never completes his homework, and he cannot follow what is going on in his classes. The executive functions present are regulating alertness and keeping emotions in check. It is extremely common for students that struggle with learning and attention issues to also have problems with executive functions. Executive functions are the brain's self-management system. Issues with executive functions can make it hard to complete schoolwork and everyday tasks. Differentiation and special accommodations can help make a difference to students like Josh.
Stop it there. So again, that was a day in the life of a student in a kind of more traditional sense of them going to school. Now let's stop and think about what a day in the life of a student or one of your students might feel like right now for them during remote learning. And what I tried to do is to think about it. Actually contacted some of my friends who have their own children in middle or high school to get ideas for what their days look like. And this is kind of a combination of that, of, them waking up at 7 a.m., they're checking their LMS, they're getting dressed, but they're also maybe helping their siblings with things because maybe a parent is working from home or a parent still has to go to work. They make breakfast, maybe for a sibling. They're logging into their first synchronous math 1 lesson. Oh no, their internet is lagging. What are they supposed to do? They start to panic. They can't get in. They're late getting in. Then they have to go out and watch a recorded session. Oh, the link isn't working. What are they supposed to do now? Now they're supposed to log into a Q&A session for science, but their sister needs the device. But they have so many questions for their teachers. They don't know when else they're going to be able to connect with their teacher to get the answers because the assignment's due in a couple of days, but they know they have other things that are taking priority. They stop to help siblings get connected or help with their own work. And then by 11:30, they finally grab a quick snack and they log in to start another recorded session. Again, by 11:30, I am exhausted. There are so many moving parts for them right now that we as educators a lot of times feel helpless with. It's like, oh, I don't know what to do to help them. But we know that this combination of exhaustion plus frustration, it can be very demotivating for our students. So how do we start to think about this idea of executive function? A lot of people ask, is it nature or nurture? A lot of people think that, oh, some people are just wired that way. They're born that way. They just know how to be super organized. They know how to prioritize tasks. They know how to get things done, how to stay motivated. But then there are a lot of people who believe, I think some of that is nurture. It's the environment that they're surrounded in, their capacity to see other people function at that level, or having people around them that are helping them through the process. But we've actually learned through research that it's a balance of both, which is really important to understand. When we think about executive function, it's really thinking about the frontal lobe of the brain, the prefrontal cortex. That's where all of this is happening. But when humans are born, this area is not fully developed. So children are not born with these skills. So that tells us they have the potential to develop them. This is a portion of the brain that can constantly grow and evolve and understand and take in new information. And that's really important to stress to your students that, hey, I know you're struggling with this. Just because, Jessica may look really organized and on top of things and she's posting everything at the times that she's supposed to, it doesn't mean that you can't get there as well. We might just have to approach things a little differently for them. So these are a lot of the areas you heard them reference in the video about executive function. Some people call it the CEO of the brain. It's, kind of keeping everything moving, keeping everybody moving forward in life. For our purposes today, as much as I would love to tap into all of these, I know we don't have that much time. I'm going to quickly tap into paying attention, flexibility, task initiation, and time management, because these are the ones, again, that we are hearing from secondary students and educators that students are really struggling with right now, especially in remote learning. So the first one, paying attention. I tried to find an image to depict how I think some students may be feeling. This may be you at times if you're joining your own sessions with things from work. But paying attention is really the ability to focus on a person or an activity. You could have students that are covering their ears just to try to exclude surround sound or to find that soft sound in their head, or they're feeling extremely frustrated or confused while things are happening on the screen. But again, it's really hard for us to fully understand this if it is not something that we personally struggle with in our own lives. So what I'm going to do is, again, do a really quick simulation with you to help you kind of experience what it might be like for a student who struggles with attention. So here we go. This is a great website. Our team uses it all the time. So this is a simulation. You're just going to kind of sit back, listen, and see, could you complete the task that this teacher is directing the students to do?
Okay, put away your books. We're going to play a game. In this game, we're going to find homes for the animals. Listen to me carefully. In front of you are some animal cards and a grid. I'm going to tell you where to move each animal card so every animal ends up in the right place on the grid. Are you ready? Everyone take the snake card. Now look at the grid. Put the snake card on the camel in the grid. Got it? Good. Now take the bird card and put it on the kangaroo in the grid. Dylan, are you with us? Okay. Now take the monkey. Put it on the floor.
I don't have a monkey.
Is that yours on the floor? Now find the kangaroo card.
Elias
It belongs on the
he's
ground.
Mom's friend too, remember?
Emma and Maddie, pay attention. Dylan, are you with us? Okay, now everyone, look at the octopus.
Ew, weird.
In your grid. Now look for the elephant. Jacob and Sophia, please stop. Put the elephant on the board. I want you to place the rhino on
We
top
saw
of it.
dino. I saw rhinoceros at the zoo when I went with my
Okay,
mom.
put the monkey on the floor. Jaden, don't interrupt.
I don't have any
And then put the
animals
shark
left.
on the
Miss
elephant and on the
Aldano,
shark,
my
put the
game is missing a piece.
Ready?
I know I messed up.
Now flip your cards over. What do you see?
So again, that hopefully gave you this idea of even in remote learning, there could be all these extraneous things happening around your students that you might not be hearing or recognizing, or it could be you periodically stopping and asking things where some students are talking over each other, or multiple students are asking questions. There's a lot of different things that could be happening that could really be preventing our students from being able to fully pay attention and focus, even if it's something that's been recorded ahead of time, reminding them of the importance of attention. So I would love to hear from you in the chat. How might this student feel? The student that was receiving these directions, how did you feel when you were listening to it? And how might other students be feeling if they're seeing that, oh, all these other students are posting everything, even though it says it's optional, but I've only been doing the things that I could, or I only was able to get through half of it because there was so much going on at home. I'd love to hear from you in the chat. How do you think some of these students are feeling right now? What is some of the anxieties, or I see confused? Absolutely. But again, remembering in remote learning, you're not there to keep repeating it, or for them to walk up to you after class and just quickly ask or confirm what it is they're supposed to do. A lot of times they don't feel comfortable in that setting with remote learning. Yes, very lost, defeated, a lot of different ways that we might feel. But there's also this very real thing, and I actually shared this article with my colleagues over the weekend. I found it when I was kind of getting myself up to date with the current news. It is this thing called Zoom fatigue, but it's not only specific to Zoom. It could be to whatever remote platform you are using in order to teach your students. And Zoom fatigue, in this article, and Laura will post the article in the chat, is a great article. And it's one that you will probably read and go for yourself. Oh my gosh, I feel like that too, because I did. I thought about it with my own children. This idea that whenever they are watching a session, again, whether it's synchronous or asynchronous, there are a lot of things happening on that screen that could be very distracting and making it difficult for their attention. One is they're seeing maybe thumbnails of all the kids if it's a live session. They are seeing your face in the screen, or they're seeing it go back and forth between your face and something that you're sharing if you don't keep it in one space all the time. they are also trying to follow a chat feed, similar to what you're doing right now. So they want to see the faces of their friends. They want to be able to connect in that way, but they also want to keep up with what's being shared in the chat feed. And then lastly, there's in some situations, they've also got students that are coming off of mute and sharing. So they've got 4 different things all happening at the same time that they've maybe never experienced or trained their brains to deal with before, that can be really overwhelming. So a couple things that you can suggest to those students if you are finding out that they're very overwhelmed, or just putting it out there in the very beginning, it is okay for them to minimize their thumbnails. They don't necessarily have to see the faces of everybody in order to feel connected with the conversation. You might also pin your image, or show them how to pin your image, or teach them how to minimize the screen so you aren't as large on the screen. But this will also keep it so that as students are speaking, that image isn't constantly bouncing back and forth. They're always just seeing you on the screen. Muting everybody. This is one of the things that we've learned as everybody comes into the session. Put everybody on mute, but then give them the option to come off of mute if there's something that they really want to share. But again, having everybody able to talk as soon as they join the session can be really hard for some students to get connected and to feel comfortable with the session. And lastly, be purposeful when you're using the chat window. Make sure that if you are asking students to post things in the chat, that it is specific things that are going to help or aid other students. Because again, the chat can become very overwhelming. Students will lose information in the process that they may really need, that could really delay their capacity to feel successful at the end of a lesson. So again, it's a great article, one that I would suggest that you take a look at. Here are just some other strategies to help students with attention, giving really clear one-step directions with visuals. These are great when you're teaching live on a screen, when you're doing a recording, or when you're sending the directions out to them. Visuals are also a great way to help and support your ELL students, as well as your students with learning disabilities. Provide adequate wait time between slides. So I know I've not done the best job of modeling this with you as adults, but whenever you ask a question, or when you first go to a new screen with information on it, pause for like 30 to 45 seconds and just give them time to absorb what they're seeing. Give them time to take it in. Don't let anyone speak, but then start to talk about what might be displayed on the screen. Build in routines and consistency. Format your lessons or your recordings the same way. Start with an overview, maybe go ahead and share with them the learning objectives, go through the content, do your review, ask those questions that I posed earlier along the way. But again, consistency is really important. And I'm going to bounce ahead to the last one, which is encourage your students to have something nearby that they can have some type of fidget. It can be a stress ball. If they don't have anything like that, tell them to grab a wad of paper, or to grab some tissues or toilet paper, whatever it helps, just to have something in their hands that if they start to feel overwhelmed or their attention is starting to stray, that they can just squeeze that and refocus themselves and help them get back on track. The next one I want to talk about is this idea of task initiation. This may be something that you are also suffering from right now, and that is the ability to start a task even if you don't want to, or not. You may never get to it, or you delay it until the very last minute. For a lot of our students, they probably feel like this poor girl on the right-hand side. They're going, I just can't do this for 3 or 4 more weeks. I just don't know. And you might have parents that are feeling the same way. So here is what task initiation in action may feel like. So I asked you again to have that sheet of paper. So if you used it before to jot down your task, if you would just flip it over, or if you have another one nearby, you can do that. But in just a minute, I'm going to give you a series of directions, and I'm going to ask you to simply follow the directions and then post in the chat, what is the answer? So here we go. Using a moderately large piece of recycled paper, specifically 8.5 by 11, and a fine point black ink pen, draw a 2D shape with 8 sides. Each side is equal length, exactly 2 inches long. Upon completion, your drawing should be scarlet. All right, so if everybody would go ahead and post, what is the answer? Oh, I'm waiting, I'm not seeing anything. Oh, I see. Josh put maybe a stop sign. Good job. Come on, everybody else. Catch up. Let's go. I gave you directions. I even read them. Let's go. Let's go. Give me your answers. All right. The correct answer is draw a stop sign. But again, stopping to think about for some of your students, The fact, again, I gave a lot of directions in one big chunk, but I also read it while they were potentially trying to read it themselves and unpack it. So this is a big part of task initiation. Students feeling overwhelmed when they see so many directions or so much information at one time. So kudos to those of you who drew your red octagon or your stop sign. Nicely done. So again, stopping to think about, how might a student feel if this is what you put on the screen, and even if you give them wait time, by the point that they get to being able to actually stop and do it, how do you think some of them may be feeling in regards to even attempting it? It can be really hard for a lot of them. So how do we help our students who are really struggling with this idea of task initiation? Quick things, chunk by task or time. Give them small pieces or break it down, and then out and beside parentheses, give them an idea of how long that particular task or that particular part of the direction may take them. Again, helping them to set goals, practice problem solving, and again, providing choice. Letting them know that, all right, the order with which they want to work on something is completely their choice. Just give a deadline of when you would like for them to submit things, or give them ideas of, hey, periodically touch base with me and submit something so I know how you're working and I can be giving you feedback along the way. Another one, time management. Again, as we talked about earlier, when you were making a list of activities, we know that how we have utilized time in the past is no longer. My days are structured so differently right now than they ever were whenever I was working. So really, again, your students, they're having to stop and think about, what does time management look like so that they are using their time well to complete tasks. Some of you may have heard the Mark Twain quote, eat a frog first thing every morning and nothing worse will happen to you the rest of the day. This is actually a quote that I'm using with my own girls because I'm using this strategy. It's called priority list. It's working with your students on setting priorities each day. And basically the way you use the Mark Twain quote is that you tell them to identify their frog. What is that thing that they are least excited to work on the next day? And don't take offense if it happens to be your class or your assignment. But it is a way, again, if you're their advisory teacher, homeroom teacher, if you're just that teacher that they feel very connected with, ask them, what is going to be your frog tomorrow? Have them share that with you. And then tell them, all right, that's what you're going to do first. So again, helping them create their list of to-dos, rank them, do the frog first, and then after that, everything else will feel so much easier because they've gotten that frog out of the way. They've gotten that thing that they are least excited about, and they can feel really accomplished. If you want to dive deeper into this entire protocol, there is a YouTube video that Laura posted. It is a great video showing a teacher work with her class on priority lists, but it is also something that you could absolutely do one-on-one with your students. Some other things to help them if they're struggling with time management, help students break down assignments into smaller chunks, encourage them to create a remote learning schedule. Again, it's not going to look the same, and tell them each day, it's okay for each day to be different. It's okay for their Monday schedule to look different from their Tuesday, but have them go ahead and kind of map out each week. What are their days going to look like, and when are those chunks of time when they can dedicate to working on school? But also creating checklists. We still have a large population of people out there. They like the physical joy of checking things off on a list. It gives them that sense of accomplishment. And then the last one we're going to touch on before we wrap up is this idea of flexibility. Flexibility in the world of executive function really means a person's capacity to effectively cope with change. And I specifically brought this one in again at the end because we know that ourselves as educators, as well as our students, they are dealing with a lot of change. We have some students that don't know if they're coming or going. They don't know what's happening. They are every single day just doing what they can to try to keep their heads above water. They are really struggling and suffering from not having the interactions that they're used to or the support that they're used to in school. So when we think about a flexibility and really helping our students cope with change, This is where, and I love Thomas posted this earlier in the chat, where he's sharing photographs and he's bringing some humor into his sessions, sharing things about his own life. That is going to be really instrumental for your students, for them to see that you're also being really open-minded. You're being a little bit flexible about when things get done. You're being empathetic and recognizing and completely reiterating to them, hey, I know that things might be happening at home that don't normally happen when you're trying to do your schoolwork. Share with them things that you've had to maybe adapt in your own life. It could be right before you taught a lesson. It's, hey, right before this lesson, thought I was going to do this, and my lawn crew showed up and they decided to start mowing outside. So I had to quickly change where I was going to do this lesson. Again, putting yourself out there and letting them see your vulnerability, but also your capacity to take things in stride and look at things from very different angles and different perspectives is really going to help to ease their stress, but also asking some of your students to share some of those with other students. To be able to share what's something yesterday that did not go like you thought it was, or what are some of those bloopers, the funny things that are happening in their lives that they never thought would, or that this situation has lent itself to. So again, we know the power of humor. And it can be really, really beneficial for our students right now when they are coping with change. So I'm going to kind of conclude with this quote, and then we will get to sharing with you how you can get access to all these resources. This is a great one from Albert Einstein. And when you first read it, you may think, oh, but I do teach my pupils. That's not quite what he's saying. What he's really getting at is, yes, we can teach all day long. And we can teach them over and over and over again. We can have the best lessons in the world. We can have the best remote lessons, the best recorded lessons. But if we don't provide the right conditions for our students to learn, they are going to struggle. They are not going to be successful, or they're not going to feel successful. So we hope that today's session kind of equipped you with some strategies and some techniques that go outside the realm of directly teaching content and more to creating those conditions that are going to keep them motivated. They're going to help them with some of their executive functioning skills, but also help them start to recognize, okay, I do struggle with attention, and that's okay, because this is something I can work on. This is something that I can be better with. So I am going to ask, and I am not going to turn on the timer because I do want to be respectful of time. But as you think about your favorite teacher or professor, or any educator that you've had in life, it could even be a teacher that was maybe a fitness instructor, or something that, like a Spanish, if you took a Spanish class as an adult, whatever it might be, what is that one word or phrase that describes that person? I would love to hear you share in the chat. What is that phrase or that one word that describes that person? Oh, I love it. Yes, empathetic. Ooh, fearless. I like it, Monique. It is important sometimes for us to experience that sense of fearlessness with educators. Energy, talented. For me, it was, when I think about my favorite teacher, she was also always soft-spoken. She had a way of being very stern and getting our attention, but in a very soft-spoken way. You always felt at ease. There was never a high level of stress, but it didn't mean that you didn't recognize when she was being serious about something or when she needed your attention. So these are great, talented, compassionate. I love it. So keep that in mind. Keep all of these things in mind, and stop to reflect and ask yourself, are these things that I'm also bringing to my students right now? Are these things that they would see or hear or feel from you right now? Because we know how important they are to us as adults. When we think back on our own teachers and professors, now is the time to really stop and reflect. You know what? It may not be as critical that they know how to solve that equation or that they read that novel, but at the end of the day, did they feel like they could be successful in this situation? Final quote, love Maya Angelou. I've learned that people will forget what you say, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So again, I hope today I was able to inspire you a little bit, and that you are leaving and feeling like you have been heard, and that you can keep doing this, that you are remotivated. If you want to go back and watch the recording or share it with friends, here is the link. Laura will be posting all of these in the chat for you. In addition, if you want to have access to this slide deck, you can also get it here. I apologize, the bit.ly is a little long. All the short ones are starting to get used up because everybody in the world's creating bit.lys. So I just did the FI Connects and then today's date. And then lastly, if you are able to take a couple minutes right now, we would love to hear from you, feedback on this session, but there will also be a couple of questions at the end of the survey asking you about future FI Connects. We are definitely at a place where we are starting to reevaluate and determine how best to continue providing you with the resources in the space and the things that you need. So we would love to hear from you, your feedback on, is this something you would like to continue to see happening? And if so, what kind of structure and what types of things would you like to talk about? So again, we would love, love, love your feedback. So again, all of those are populated in the chat. Please let us know if you need us to repost any or you're not able to get any. And lastly, thank you so much. We cannot thank you enough for joining. It is exactly, I apologize, 1 minute past. I apologize. But again, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to hearing your feedback on the survey. And Laura and I will stay on for a couple minutes. If there are any questions or anything else that we can do to help you right now, we will be around.